All right, let's change some gears here, and let's get into that boring thing called home inspections and risk management. So I have a few questions for you, only because when I started out doing this, I didn't know who to go to ask questions, except for another attorney I've always used for other businesses in the past, but who has no experience doing this type of work. So I'm hoping that you can kind of fill in the blanks for anybody new starting out to get into the home inspection business, whether they're going to work for a multi-firm or whether they're going to start their own business. So a couple questions I had was exactly what steps need to be taken for just an individual to just start a home inspection business. What's the first thing he needs to do? Or she nowadays. There's a lot of women getting in the business.
Get the education.
Okay.
You need to know what you're doing. Like anything, if you want to be a professional, get the training of a professional, do the pre-inspection outlines that are necessary. Make sure that you have the contract that is going to protect you. Make sure you have the insurance coverage. But more than anything else, have a plan. Know what you need to know. Know what you don't need to know. But make sure all the ingredients you need. It's like baking a cake. If you leave out the sugar, you leave out the flour, it's not going to work out.
Right. It's not going to work out. That's a good point. And you did mention contracts. So we are going to get into that a little more in depth here. So basically, getting educated to a certain extent before you open up your business, that is great advice. That's the same advice I would give somebody. If you have no experience whatsoever in the trades of maybe framing or plumbing or heating and cooling or foundations, if you just don't know how a house is put together, you need to do a lot of training on that, because that is going to be something you're dealing with every day, and you need to know how to answer questions and troubleshoot things before you open your mouth and say the wrong thing to the customer because you're just inexperienced. So that was a really good point right there. As far as if I want to start a business now, home inspection business, do you think I need to do a LLC, an S corp, a C corp? Do you have any advice on that?
It depends on who you are.
Right.
What you own, how you're directing your business. If you're already going in with someone else, follow their lead. And the reason for it is learn from them. You will learn more by experience and find out what people are doing right and what people are doing wrong if you just ask the right question and listen. You
Right.
will learn more by listening than talking. It's always the rule.
Okay. All right. You listen right now. I'm going to do some talking. All right. Good point. All right. So it depends on, do you have a lot of assets is what you're saying?
Correct.
To break that down, if you already have a lot of assets, maybe you own some property, or maybe the house you live in, you own, you want to keep that separate from your business in case the event you do get a claim and someone tries to sue you and so forth. So about right?
Yes, make sure that you do have, though, a corporate standing versus as an individual, and that's the point you really made.
Yeah.
Is that the more you do it as a person, the more your assets are open. The more you deal it as a business with the IRS notified, with all the steps necessary to be a business, which is really very easy.
Which requires a federal ID number.
Sure, and the state of California has a list of all the things you have to do. Call the state of California. Call your local business community. Be a member of the business community. Follow their guidelines, and you will find protections.
Right. Run your business like a business. That's what Greg's definitely pointing out there. So starting off from the ground up, with everything in place as far as your tax information, all that stuff, it's worth it in the long run, guys. It's worth it. And when I was really young, I started a business. Here's a little side story for you. You'll get a kick out of this. I started building houses and working in the trades at a very young age. I was probably 16, 17 when my uncle used to take me and have me changing doorknobs and stuff, and just minor stuff. And then over the years, I got more and more into it, and I started doing bigger and better things. And basically what I wound up doing soon after, I started working for this big construction company just as a framer. And this guy taught me a lot. And I worked with him for 2 or 3 years. And he taught me how to read blueprints and all that stuff. And then towards the building boom, when it started declining, when I started out, there was a lot of building, and that was bad. That was in 80, 85, 86. There was a lot of building going on the East Coast. And then, after 5 or 6 years, it started declining. And then when we started losing the big jobs, a lot of the older guys, remember, I was really young, and I let all these older guys, 40s, 50s, 60 years old, still banging nails and being carpenters. They're like, you know a lot. You should go start your own business. So they kind of nudged me. I was like, I don't know about that. So I tried it, and I got business. I got job after job after job. No problem at all. However, I had no clue how to run a business. I was bouncing checks all over town. I had to get my sister involved, and it was hilarious there. She goes, John, you owe more in bounce check fees than you have money in the bank. It was crazy. So I had no business experience. I had zero. All the guys at work never told me about that part. They just said, you should do this on your own, and I tried it, and I was very successful for a while. I had no problem getting to work. I knew how to do the job. I was really good at framing homes and adding additions to homes and building custom decks. I was really good at that. But when it came to business, nope, no training whatsoever. Balancing the checkbook, it was a mess. So eventually, building and the economy just went really low, and it all just kind of fell apart. So that was my wake-up call for life, for the rest of my life after that, knowing, well, if I'm going to do a business, I need to know how to do certain things. And I just got smarter from that. So it was good to fall on my face at that early age, because I was able to recover later and just be successful in other things over the years, So it was pretty cool.
Heard that story before.
You have, right? Probably from your own kids?
No.
Not your own kids. All right. So going back to what I was getting at with, the startup and all that, basically there is going to be an inspection agreement or a inspection contract. Can you specify what the difference is there?
What you're talking about is a contract. People say inspection agreement. You can have an agreement to go to the drugstore and pick up a product. That's not a contract.
See.
So the difference is an agreement can be an agreement and it can be a contract. But a contract can only be a contract. And a contract is a legal document which sets forth a duty, breach of duty, and in essence, an offer, acceptance, and consideration. And we're going to be talking about a home inspection contract and that issue in relation to very high-level defenses, which I have built into the CREIA contract.
Right. And you mentioned duties. I like how you mentioned duties. And the client has a duty, don't they?
Both sides. A contract is bilateral,
right.
Meaning both sides have duties, obligations, and conditions.
Right. So I'm going to touch on client's duty because years ago you recommended I have that in my contract. So I do have it in there. Client agrees to read the entire written report when it is received and promptly call inspector with any questions or concerns regarding the inspection or the written report. The written report should be the final and exclusive findings of the inspector. I don't think most people signing contracts are aware that they have a duty also. It's not just us doing something. They need to act.
There are conditions in every contract. There are duties in every contract. That's why it's called bilateral, meaning both sides. Mm-hmm. Understand that you are not the individual who basically makes sure that the client is okay. The client is the person who has the duty to make that client okay. And they do it by following all the rules they do in any contract. And I'll give you this example just to show you something you deal with every single day, and yet people don't recognize it. And I'll use the idea of buying an automobile.
Okay.
Let's say that I just have to have, I have to have a 150 Ford truck, and I don't want it to be 4x4. I want it 2x4, but I want to make sure it has the extended. I want to make sure it seats 5, and I want you to know it has all the right color leather and the whole 9 yards. I mean, I want the package. And let's assume that the price of that car is $50,000, and I go in and I find the color I want, which is gunmetal gray, and I want to have basically the leather look on the inside because I really want to be a cowboy. And all these other stuff involved. And I have $50,000 in cash. And I go in and say, count out that cash. And they count it out and it's $50,000. And I say, give me the keys. Do you think they're going to give you the keys? Not a chance. Because they want all the limitations in that contract. The reason for it is that's their get-out-of-jail-free card, like your contract is a get-out-of-jail-free card. And we'll go through those. But use that example. Think of that example. Mm-hmm. Do you think anyone is going to give you anything without you signing some form of contract? Otherwise, exactly. Their obligation is unlimited. There's no statute of limitations. And we'll go through that.
Even your phone service has... what, 100-page contract that's all digital that you have to accept to do. Everything we do nowadays has to have paper.
Well, buy a house, go through an escrow.
Yeah.
I just bought another condo just for as a rental, as an investment. Mm-hmm. There were 317 pages of high boilerplate that I'll tell you, parts of it I didn't understand, and I've been practicing law for 45 years. I didn't understand it. But you have no choice to sign it. And the reason for it in this example is not only are you getting the loan on the property and taking the property as not as is, but in a sense as is, and you have all the terms and conditions, and you've done your due diligence, and that same loan is going to be sold. And all the permutations and combinations of the sale of that loan from, for an example, the lender like Wells Fargo or somebody else to the federales. And the federal government is buying them because they're securing them on the secondhand market. Otherwise, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac wouldn't exist. And all the terms and conditions, for instance, you can't get a loan on any property that's going to be sold that does not have a termite inspection. Who would know that?
Right.
And all the lending rates and all the exclusions and the points and all this. Look, if you go and buy a house and you buy it all cash, it isn't all cash. It's all cash and 317 pages of documents, of which you have to sign 75 times.
Yep.
So, yes.
That's a good point. And that's the stuff that falls between the cracks that most people don't think of.
Well, most lawyers who do this work, and remember, I used to be a real estate agent and a real estate broker, and I do fix and flips, and I have been practicing basically real estate for 45 years. I don't know all this stuff.
Right, there's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to absorb there. Definitely a lot to absorb. That was a good point you made there. Good explanation. So, inspection contract. Once again, it's a contract, not an agreement. I often get that from a lot of times realtors will schedule me. Oh, you're going to send over the agreements? And first thing out of my mouth is, yeah, I'm going to send over the contracts. Okay. But everyone just uses agreement as a slang. That this is what they're using. So, but on the actual paper itself, does it have to say contract?
Absolutely.
So it does have to say contract.
And I'll go one step further since you brought up realtors. What is the document they use for their contract? A residential purchase agreement. It is not an agreement, it's a contract. They call it an RPA, residential purchase agreement, but it isn't. It's a contract.
and it has to say contract within it.
I would look. There's the word contract in it. Trust me. Okay. The car agreements are bulletproof. I mean, yes.
Yeah. Back to the car stuff real quick on a side note. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I'm hearing, you ever listen to the Car Pro show?
Yes, I do. The guy is in Texas, Houston, Texas, I believe. No, Dallas. He's in Dallas.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of good info, and I like listening to his shows on the weekends. And he had brought up in one episode where, a lot of people with leases, most people who lease cars, it's been my experience, people I talk to, friends, family, they don't know what they're getting into. I was that same guy years ago, but I learned a lot about leasing and what it means and when it ends and how to get out of it, or whatever, if there's any possibility at all. Most of the time, you cannot get out of a lease. You're going to pay for all those payments that you agreed to from the beginning. No matter when you get rid of it or whatever, you're going to pay for all those payments. But one thing they never tell you when they're about to lease you that car at the dealership is that some of the companies, maybe Ford, Mercedes, Chevy, whatever, Toyota, they require you to give them a heads up in a certain amount of time period before the end of that lease. And if you go over that time limit, they make you turn it in. They take away that option to buy it. But they don't discuss that with you because it's buried inside the contract. That's something I learned about, and I was like, that is interesting.
That is the reason why when you go through a dealership, they are deemed to be your agent. And it's their duty to make sure you know that too. Most people don't think of it that way. They think they're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
They have a dual relationship.
They have a duty.
All of us have a duty. The question is, to what extent we can enforce it.
Yeah. And how many attorneys you have to get you out of it. So, yeah, I get that. But that was just a side note I wanted to mention because I thought that was very interesting when I heard about that. And I've been leasing cars for years, and I just found out about that about 6 months ago.
And what you haven't talked about is right now a leased car, if you turn it in early, they will pay you extra to take it back because they have no cars.
Well, that's true. I actually just turned in a lease last year on a 2018 Charger Hellcat.
Okay.
And I only had 4,500 miles on it, and I get paid $11,000 to turn it in. That was nice.
There's a rumor that's true, and that's also income.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And of course, everyone has their hand out for income.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially if your initial start with I. Anything else on that topic you want to jump into? Or?
No, that's fine at this point. You're going to get into all those different terms and conditions. So